What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Athletes and Assets podcast with your host, Noah Lack. We just had a great conversation with NFL legend Shawne Merriman, who is now a serial entrepreneur running Lights Out MMA and TV as well. We went over Shawne's journey, the hardest parts about running the business, and he tells some never before heard stories. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and comment on our video. And if you can, subscribe on our YouTube channel and Spotify. All right, let's get right into it. Skip the small talk. All right, 3 years ago, if you told me for work I would need to be in Vegas on a random Wednesday, I would actually ask, like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
What's a typical Wednesday in Las Vegas for you?
You know what, man? It's crazy because, I've been here for like several years now. Well, when I used to come here, I came for different reasons, right?
Sure.
Like, come in 3 days, you hit it, then you back out. And I think that, when you become a local here, you do local things, local restaurants, local, my gyms. I train at Dragon's Lair out here, and then Xtreme Couture and Top Rank when I go and spar and want to get some training in. So you become a local, man. It's not like how people think, and trust me, I didn't think it was this nice either before I lived here. I was like, strip for 3 days and then you leave, right?
Gamble party, regret it.
And then you take it off.
Do it again.
do it again, right, for 3 days. No, man, it's been great. I don't see myself leaving here for a long time.
I guess you do have to run, a fighting league in the fighting capital of the world, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to actually start here, though, Shawne, with what I think was one of your smartest business moves. I believe it was after your rookie year on the Chargers. Your nickname is Lights Out, and for those who don't know, for context, in high school, Shawne was able to knock 4 guys out out of a game, and so they started calling you Lights Out. And that nickname is carried through high school, college, the NFL, and now. But you had the awareness after your rookie year to trademark Lights Out, but it was held by a pajama company. Can you walk me through like buying the trademark to Lights Out, like how that worked?
Yeah, I was being called Lights Out since I was 16 years old. Then finally getting drafted by the Chargers and having money for the first time to go and do stuff. So I was, me and a good friend of mine, Greg Wiseman, we were at a bar in Oceanside, just kind of having a drink. And I said, Greg, man, I want to buy Lights Out, the name and rights. I didn't even know what a trademark was at the time. I didn't know what it was, but I said, I want to own it. That's what I told him. I said, well, I want to own, And he put down his drink. He looked at me and said, Shawne, you know what I do for a living? I said, no. He said, I'm a trademark IP attorney. I said, what is a trademark? And so then we started to go through that process. Reached out. We found the company who owned all the trademarks and the classifications under that trademark of Lights Out.
Yeah.
And it was a company called PJ Salvage, which is a bigger company in Irvine, California. And it was a really big apparent company that owned them, right? A bigger one. And so we reached out to them and was like, hey, Shawne Merriman here and this. So I got on the phone took the phone from my lawyer and I said, hey, just introduce myself. I want to buy Lights Out. They said, hey, we're using it. You can't have it and this and this. And so anyway, it got a little ugly for a minute and then they gave me a price. Anyway, the final purchasing price, like around $175,000 is what I bought Lights Out for. $175,000, somewhere around there.
Which feels like a good investment at this point.
But I didn't know. The truth is, at the time, I didn't know. First of all, I didn't know what trademarks were. But I didn't even know what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted to sell clothes. Eventually, I thought that that's what I was going to do anyway. And I did. But I didn't know at that time when I wanted to buy it. Like, hey, as soon as I buy this, I'm going to go sell apparel.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know that. But anyway, I got it. And I actually did started to sell, make Lights Out apparel. And my first stores that I ever went to was a store called Sports Fever.
Okay.
In San Diego. And they had some in Orange County. It's like a sports memorabilia, but they sold apparel and clothes and team, apparel. So now I got 9 sports stores right away. Sports Fevers.
Questions I was going to ask you is like, why would a pajama company have Lights Out as a trademark? And then you think about, okay, like good night, like lights. Right. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But the foresight to do that is pretty impressive. And, I feel like you were on a track to being an entrepreneur before, Lights Out MMA and streaming became a thing. You mentioned the T-shirt company. You told me a funny story before we got on air about the Bedazzled T-shirts. Can you talk about that a little bit?
My teammates gonna give me hell for this. They're gonna laugh because they all know exactly what I'm talking about in college. I went to the University of Maryland.
Yeah. By the way, Maryland's looking good right now. Sweet 16.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. They absolutely are. So, I knew I wanted to do apparel and get into clothes. So at the time, around 2000, 50 Cent came out with these G-Unit tank tops. G-Unit tank tops. And so it was more than muscly type of tank tops. And so I bought like 20 of them, and they were blank. So I took them to this local factory to get this light switch on the G-Unit tank tops with like little bedazzled rhinestone looking things. It was god awful. It was horrible.
No real carrots.
Nothing. It was terrible. But anyway, I wore it, and I knew, I started selling them to guys in the locker room, and they thought it was ugly as hell, but they bought some from me anyway. So I had that mindset to always do that regardless. And I've always been like that since I can remember.
Your source of learning for company building, or just like being an entrepreneur, do you think you were inspired by a guy in the locker room, or you were just doing it and you learned through that?
So many people want to wait till you have the perfect plan to launch or do anything. I'll put together a plan, and whether it's perfect or not, I'm gonna just do it.
Execute, yeah.
I'm gonna just do it, because the more and more you get into business and you're a real entrepreneur, you know that nothing you do is going to be perfect starting out.
Yeah.
You switch, you pivot, you change, you flip, you do. There's so many things you go through the process, and most people never start because they're waiting for that perfect plan that don't exist. I didn't even know about apparel then. I just knew that I'm gonna go get these tank tops. I'm gonna go get these tank tops, and I wanted something on them, so I'm just gonna do it. I don't even know what to sell them for. Just do it.
Yeah.
And I later on figured it out, how to get better products, how to get cheaper products.
Yeah.
What to sell it for, what price point. And so you figure it out, man. I think a lot of people spend way, way, way too much time trying to create this perfect plan that don't exist.
Man, I love that you said that. We say something out west is that most companies we see die a suicide, not homicide.
Yep.
And part of that suicide is they wait too long to ship their product or get out there. And it's like, dude, my first podcast wasn't this. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Your T-shirts, I might not have bought them out of PacSun or, right? But it's like that learning process for you. I really like that you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And too, and it's funny you said about PacSun, because I ended up selling the shirts in Tilly's.
Okay.
I had Tilly's was my first really, really big retail.
Yeah.
From that. So yeah.
But MMA was always an interest of yours. I mean, I've heard you mention in previous conversations, you were training MMA in the off seasons. You got super interested in it. When do you think it got to the point where it went from I love training and learning about the sport to like, I can make my own MMA league?
Yeah.
That's a huge mental shift.
It was a perfect storm, and I'll tell you why. In 2000, after my rookie year, after the end of 2005, I was really good friends. I'm really good friends with Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, right? And he was already heavy into the MMA world at that time. So I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, really Washington, D.C. almost. My uncles, and I had family members that were professional boxers.
Right.
So I just naturally grew up around them, and I grew up just boxing in the neighborhood, and so I just kind of picked up on that aspect of it. So I was hitting the mitts one day in Jay Glazer's gym in L.A., and he looked at me and said, "Man, you can punch. I didn't know you can box." I said, "Yeah, you know what? My uncles are professional boxers, and our family, and He said, "I think you should try MMA because it'll help you out in football with your hands and leverage and different things." I said, "Dude, whatever helped me out in football, sign me up."
Yeah.
Right?
Sign them up.
Sign them up.
Sign them up because of the clip.
That's it. And I said, whatever helped me out in football, I'm there. And so he texted me an address. The next day I show up to this address. He texts me, Jay Glazer's right here, and then Randy Couture
is
right
legend.
here. So, the funny story about that, I'm looking at Jay and I'm quiet because I'm thinking he's almost setting me up to fight Randy Couture that day. And I didn't say anything, but in my head, I'm looking like, hey, dude, this is not happening. I'm not fighting Randy Couture.
I'm not saying you don't have a chance, but that's tough smoke.
Oh,
off
dude,
the bat.
listen, I'm crazy, not stupid, right?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me was he said, no, this is what you're going to do. And he walked me through how Randy was going to help me use my hands. And it was life-changing. It was something that I knew I wanted to be in, just the discipline of it alone. And I did really get better with my hands. I came out and led the NFL in sacks the following year because I was really good with my hands and leverage and stuff now going against those big 330, 340-pound tackles.
Right.
And so I was training with Randy and those guys every offseason. And more guys were coming in the gym. Tyron Woodley, who was just coming on around that time. And,
right.
Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. And I was around everybody who was big in the space at that time, in that early mid to late 2000s, I was around, training with during the offseason. So when you're around the sport, you're around the coaches, the managers, you started to meet everybody in that industry. What goes on, who goes, like what happens, how does the sport go? And you start learning about the behind the scenes on contracts and, why did this guy have this dispute with the UFC or who's managing him? You start to learn all this stuff. And then, when I retired, I got into TV. I went straight to NFL Network for the show that's now Good Morning Football. It used to be NFL AM and, and so forth. So I was a part of building that show, Fox Sports and ESPN. And then that's how launching Lights Out Xtreme Fighting happened. I understood TV and production, and I also understood the business of MMA.
A lot of people in media just get in front of the camera, but you were in front and behind. You kind of, saw how both sides work. I love this story that I've heard you tell, and I would love for you to share this, right? You got to choose wisely when your first pitch meetings are and who are the first people you're approaching to with some big idea. You were crazy enough to show someone at Fox, the first a marketing deck of the league. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but you were almost leaving the building after you gave them those materials until they gave you a call. What happened next?
So this is when the UFC had just left to go to ESPN on that monster deal over there. And I knew that there was a void at Fox for MMA. All they had is, I think, PBC Boxing at the time with Al Heyman. And so I had great relationships. Obviously, I was, like you said, in front of the camera where I was doing the show Speak for Yourself at the time. And I was on Colin Cowherd's show a couple days a week. So I got off of her set one day. We got finished shooting Colin Cowherd. I got up and walked upstairs and just a big exec at Fox Sports. His door was cracked open about that much. And so I kind of peeked my head in and, hey, yo, what's up? I came on in. Hey, you guys looking to get back into MMA? Say, Shawne, in fact, we are. We're looking at a couple companies right now and this and this. And I had a 5-page marketing deck already done for Lights Out Sports. For Lights Out Xtreme Fighting. Lights Out Xtreme Fighting wasn't even launched yet. It was nothing. It wasn't even up.
Yeah.
So I put down the deck on the exec's desk.
Yeah. And
I go back down. So I say, whenever you get a minute, whenever you get an opportunity, let me know what you think. And so I went downstairs in the Fox garage. Before I open my car door, my phone rings. And it's somebody from the Fox, the Fox building, because I recognize the number. Say, Shawne, can you come back upstairs? I said, yeah. So I came upstairs and they said, is this your promotion? Is this your league? I said, yeah. They said, when could you be ready? And I just said, 2 months. Mind you, I don't know.
You have no idea.
I don't know if it's going to take 6.
Number. Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to take 4, 8. I have no idea. But we're going to be ready in 2 months.
Yeah.
Regardless. So they sent me over to Fox Sports 1. And Josh Oakley, his name was Josh Oakley, who was one of the heads of that division of Fox Sports 1. Pitched to him, showed him the deck, showed him everything we wanted to do. He loved it. They then sent me over to the regionals of Fox Sports West and Prime Ticket, and I had to pitch again.
Yeah.
And so that's how it happened. They loved it too. And then our first show, our first fight out the gate, tied the Anaheim Ducks in viewership.
Wow.
Tied the Anaheim Ducks. And then that's when I got a call on that day. So I negotiated the Fox Sports deal. And by the way, they didn't give us any money. They didn't give me any money. What they did was I negotiated with Fox Sports a 2-hour time slot, but every hour I get 8 minutes worth of commercials and they get 8 minutes.
Right. Okay.
Which is about 16 minutes worth of hour.
Right.
So I got a total of 16 minutes worth of commercial space.
Right.
So I then went out and sold all the sponsorship on the mat, in cage, and also commercial space, and that's how we launched.
You mentioned that, so far you bootstrapped this up to date, which we'll get into a little more, but I like the sponsorship side, since you brought it up. Did you go and leverage your contacts that you've developed and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Fox is putting us on. Let's fill these slots?
Yeah, I did. So I reached out to everybody I knew who had companies. And I had a lot of friends and networks and with their own water companies and different products. And
hey, man, you got a marketing budget? Oh, yeah. By the way.
And it happened. It was just like that. I picked up the phone. I said, yo, dude, you got to, are you guys looking to get into any kind of sports? So, yeah, we are. How about MMA? We haven't looked at it yet. Well, I got MMA, then I started to pitch. I have a league now. And so, I, right out the gate, I got 6 sponsors, like within 30 days or less. I sold the commercial inventory to them. Yeah. Some of them didn't have either commercials yet.
Yeah.
I got them to make a commercial like in 3 weeks to air it on Fox.
Unreal.
So that's how the whole thing really started,
Yeah. I love the 2 months, right? Giving yourself a random amount of time. Okay, now we have 2 months to get this together. There's this phrase that I hear a lot called Parkinson's Law. Basically, Parkinson's Law is like when you're like operating a company or trying to get a product out, the time frame that you give your people to execute something is like the time frame they will do it in. So if you gave your team 3 days to execute a specific deadline, then they will get it. They will work to get it done in 3 days. But if you like maybe want it done in 3 days, but you give them a timeline of 3 weeks, they're going to take 3 weeks to get it done. And so this is the idea of Parkinson's Law, because people sort of mentally prepare for like the time deadline.
Look, people are way more capable of things that they can do than they know, right? Yeah. And in my head, I don't care if I need to stay up, to midnight for 7 days a week for 2 months in order to get this thing ready to go. And that was my mindset. Even if it generally would have taken us 4 months, I'm getting it done in 2.
Yeah.
That's just plain and simple.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The thing that I think you've done really well that I want to give you your flowers for is that, obviously probably people out the gate were skeptical of you competing with the UFC or other fighting leagues that are starting up. But your angle of Lights Out being more on the amateur side, the up and coming, finding the rising talent, is something that is super complementary to something like a UFC. Is that what you originally thought it was going to be, or did you have to course correct?
No, that was always the plan. In fact, it's funny you say that, and this is why you don't tell people certain things, you just do it. I had a friend at the time when I was about to launch Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, and the first press release came out, and I forgot the publication who picked it up and wrote a story on it, but I sent it to my friend at the time that I knew. And when he saw it, the first thing he said, oh, what about the UFC? They're there. Not a congratulations, not a dude, that's awesome. It was none of that.
Yeah. And
so that was the last time I ever spoke to him after that, because our philosophy is this, just because Coca-Cola's there, there's other sodas in the market people drink.
Right.
Yeah. Coke is always going to be Coke, right? And that's who they are. People got Verizon, people got T-Mobile, people, you get what I'm saying? So I don't have that mindset of ever competing with anybody, but for sure with UFC, because no one's ever going to be bigger than them, ever. Yeah. They're the UFC is the NFL of combat sports. That's just who they are.
Mm-hmm.
from their branding and their promoting and the quality of production and storytelling. They're the NFL of combat sports, and no one's going to be bigger than the NFL ever, and no one's going to be bigger than the UFC. Now, what you can do, you can be different, right? We have all these different verticals with tech in the gloves, right? We put chips, partnership with Shot Tracker. So,
nice.
Sometime this year, we're going to be rolling out where you can see how fast the punch is coming and, the G-force of it once it lands and just, really cool stuff, betting and all this stuff. We got made a partnership with a company called PTF Lab.
Yeah.
That the sponsorships can change, the AI sponsorships change on the mat. So when you're watching the fights now, a sponsor can see something different in China or than they would in South America or the US.
Are they starting to do that in NBA, right? I see electronic, I see like Coinbase on the court.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have the technology for that.
Yeah.
In combat sports. And so again, you don't and you'll hear me say this a lot. I don't compete, I create.
Yeah.
And when you can create these type of things, it's not there. You never have to worry about running up against competition ever. Mm-hmm. And in fact, your competition, if they are big enough and they see value in it, they want to work with you.
Yeah.
And so that's really the cool thing about everything that I always have done.
Yeah, absolutely. And to stay on this NFL comparison, you said if the UFC is like the NFL, lights out is like high major college. It's a huge business, different complexities.
Right.
But people love it. And so, I think that's really cool what you're doing. Walk me through a fight night for you. We see a lot of stuff, and I don't want to keep going there, but seeing like how crazy Dana White is, like walking around, making sure the production and the cameras are good, the fighters, don't get in any legal trouble or anything before they start fighting.
Yeah.
I am sure leading up to May in Long Beach, like you're making sure this card stays intact.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, you have like 40 other backup plans. Can you walk me through the process of a fight night?
Mean, when it gets to fight night, my work is pretty much done. Now I'm just entertaining. I might have sponsors or people that came in town that came in and watched the fight, and I'm talking through, our production. I'm just talking to them about what we're doing and what our plans are. So the pressure's off fight night.
Okay.
It's the few weeks leading up to it.
I know that can be chaotic.
It's chaotic, dude. I mean, we lost, like 3 fights, three of our bigger fights on this last card, and trying to go back and forth with Jane, who's our matchmaker, and we are going back and forth with the operations and ticketing and venues, and so there's a lot of that, and obviously, and then too, I'm still pounding away at the media, right, promoting the fight leading up to it, and so when fight week is always a little crazy, but fight night is great for me. I walk in, everything is set up, we're done. I have a great team, man. I put together a great team of people who's been in the combat sports space for almost 2 decades in doing this. They came all the way from the Strike Force and Bellator, that's working with me now. And so when you have a team like that, the pressure's off when it comes to that. Now just I really, my main focus is always concentrate on growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine on fight night, you're like the man of the hour. Like if I'm rolling with you on a fight night, it must be a good night. It's probably a lot of fun.
It is fun, man, because for one, I'm still a fan of the sport.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And so, I still get the jitters during our weigh-ins, when we had the weigh-ins on Friday. So
do you get nervous that you'll have to be in the middle of a scrum? You have to break it up?
No, actually, I don't mind that part of it.
Okay.
And that happens, obviously, sometimes.
I wouldn't mind an accidental punch to the face. I'm not as tough as you, so I don't know if I can handle that. But.
No, being a former athlete, my mind works a little bit different than anybody in this space who wasn't a former professional athlete or anything like that, because I understand what it takes, and I train with with a lot of these guys, not my fighters, but other fighters in general. So I know what it takes to be in this sport.
Yeah,
I know exactly what they go through, and the trials and the weight cutting and like everything that they have to do. Every aspect of this. So when we get to the weigh-ins, and I finally see everybody, because I don't know all the fighters in person unless they fought for us before. So I get a chance to meet a lot of these guys. I still have that walking down, that game day, the night before the game feeling, So you'll see in some of the the face-offs and stuff, man, I'm moving around like I'm it feels like I'm getting ready for a game.
Like you feel like that receivers had that slant route in the middle.
Dude, it's and you can feel the tension between these guys, and I know it lining up across from someone who I'm about to play against.
Yeah,
and you're looking them dead in the eyes, and you get that, and I'm that close to the action.
Yeah,
so I get that.
That's pretty special.
I get that, man. So I'm still a fan, even though I own the company and I'm doing things on the other side now. But I'm still such a fan of this.
What do you think your most key relationships are on the sponsorship side? Do you feel like you're working with a lot of energy drink CPG brands, sports tech companies? Like, what is important relationships for yourself?
Well, so this is why it's not to pat myself on the back too much, but I'm very unique in this space, right? Being a former NFL player who has been around combat sports for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Probably one of the first to really dive in, not just training, but, getting really hands-on in the business.
Yeah.
First one ever. And so I brought a lot of football eyes to this space, a lot. That's why our viewership is higher. We're the most distributed regional promotion in the world.
Yeah.
Eyeball-wise, what people watch this. And wow. A lot of that is due because I had a platform coming in here, so we don't spend any money in marketing. Zero.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
No meta ads. Nothing.
None. And so when you can build a company that way, it's really special and it's really unique. So to get on the sponsorship side, combat sports especially is not, a lot of companies don't have an appetite for it. Right, getting into it. So you're not going to have, some. It's
not for everyone, but that's okay.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone. But there are some that say, you know what? We see the numbers in combat sports, and we want some of those numbers in that demographic. Because you can't deny the viewership. You can't deny the eyeballs when it comes to combat sports. And so some of these companies I talk to, call it a water company or something that it's like you might have a CMO there or something that is old school,
right?
That their traditional TV buys, their traditional radio buys, or their traditional, sports that they like to get into. Hey, you got to pivot.
Yeah,
you got to pivot.
Yeah,
because people and companies with that way of thinking, they die. They do. We've seen some of the biggest companies not be able to pivot. And so when I'm talking to these sponsors and we're having those discussions, it's up to me to really present why they should, get into the space. And obviously our numbers and viewership are skyrocketing. And I still, after we're off of my network, Lights Out Sports TV, we're on Fubo and Bally's and Amazon Freevee and BN Sports and Pluto. And, we're just announcing a deal soon. It's not out yet, but will be with UFC Fight Pass.
Wow.
So we're very distributed.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There's a lot of stuff to root you on and cheer about, but obviously, there's some hard shit that you have to go through to get to this point. Whether it's leading up to a fight or in general, what do you think is the hardest part about your job and what you do?
I think for me, because we're hiring all the time, we're bringing new people in, and we're whether it's on the digital side or social media side. I mean, operations side, we're constantly bringing people in, and so I let it be known what it took for me to get here. Right. And we just talk about, I'm doing my first round of raising capital.
Yeah.
So you can only imagine what these last few years look like for me when you're operating on very little.
Yeah.
And so when you got people to come into a company or they come around and they don't know what you had to do to get here and they're half-assing it, I'm the worst person to work with.
Yeah.
I am the absolute worst person to work with, because if I see that you're not putting any effort in and you're just looking to get paid and you're not, I'm the absolute worst person to work with.
And you have 37 people across your team, right?
Correct.
All bootstrapped so far.
Yeah.
Just think about that. I mean, I've met few people that have a 37 person team that haven't raised outside capital. You've kind of moved from being a linebacker to quarterback.
Yeah. In a sense, that's a great analogy. Great comparison.
And how have you had to adjust?
Well, I can't tackle anybody anymore. They piss me off.
Well, HR wouldn't like that. But you didn't take any capital yet, so I don't know what HR. You may not have one.
We don't have an HR yet, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. I still find myself very much in front of the camera, promoting, talking about Lights Out, what we got coming up, and stuff like that. But I'm even more on a backside of the business. Everything that happens behind, from production to what graphics packages we're going to show, and what do I want in the lower thirds with sponsorships, what sponsorships supposed to go on what rounds. I mean, anything that goes on in any of the companies, everything still goes through me.
Yeah.
And that part, I think that I think most people don't know. You know, I've had people to come to the fights, and you know, I walk them back to our big production set in the trucks, to TV trucks, and I'm like, man, I didn't know all this goes on. I said, yeah, this is a lot. You know, we had a pretty big production, a pretty big team. So there's a lot of work on a back end of things that people don't necessarily get a chance to see all the time. So yeah, it's just a bunch of directing traffic is what I call it. I'm a traffic director.
Yeah.
You know, fires happen, I put them out. You know, I go around with tools and fix things when stuff is broke. It's a nonstop of managing, pushing, making sure everybody's pulling their weight type of situation.
Yeah. And we've talked about one part of the business so far, right? The sort of the fighting side. But what makes this even crazier is that Lights Out TV, you're sort of your own TV streaming service.
Yeah.
I mean, you're running this sort of in conjunction with the Fighting League, and speak on that a little more, and what you have going on in the streaming service, because that's fascinating.
Yeah. So you know, we talked a little bit about. I got the opportunity, man. This is why I feel like I'm really fortunate at. It's hard as hell to get one of those seats at the big networks. So when you retire, you got Fox Sports, ESPN, you know, NFL Network.
Right.
They typically, everyone got about 4 seats to a table. And, you know, I was able to hold one of those 4 seats down for a couple of years or so at a time with all these networks. WWE Network, when they launched, I launched with them and hosted the WrestleManias and Monday Night Raws and SmackDowns. And so I've seen a lot. And so now we talk about being talent and then having the behind the scenes part of it and knowing how things operate. So I feel like I got an MBA in the streaming and broadcasting and network space.
Yeah.
Because I've done it for so long, and I've been at the biggest. So I didn't launch it just like from the ground and said, hey, I think I'm gonna try to go figure this thing out. Like, I knew exactly who I wanted to bring in. I knew exactly who I wanted to work with. So I ended up launching Lights Out Sports TV, which is a new free ad supported all sports streaming platform that's available on every CTV device. So every smart TV, iOS and Android, and we're distributed globally across the world. And the main reasons for that that I wanted to do was I had some ideas, and I got a chance to work. We were at Fubo. You know, Fubo's great partners of ours. And I had ideas. I had things that I wanted to do that I would wish that Fubo did, or somebody who I was working with did. But when you don't own it, you can't maneuver in that kind of way. And I've helped create a lot of stuff, man. A lot of things that people see now. Then you're like, oh, Shawne was behind that? Nobody know about it. But, you know, I was a big part of creating certain things. But I never had my own. So for me, it was almost like I wanted to put all sports and nothing but sports on one platform where people can come to one place, you know, from chess. Well, we got World Poker there, TNA Wrestling's there, motocross, motorsports, Outdoor America, fishing. We got 320 sports movies and documentaries, 17 different live sports. And I wanted to create this hub.
Yeah.
This hub of just sports.
Well, it's like all those things you mentioned, from poker to fishing, niche but very engaged. I feel like. So basically, what I'm hearing is like you've been able to find sort of the white space of sports that aren't getting enough love and coverage. I also heard that you covered the sort of the East-West Shrine practice as well, right? So finding these like spaces that aren't like necessarily being covered. How big are we talking here with some of these niches you're referring to?
They're very big, man. Because, like, for example, fishing, what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you were like the demographic for fishing was, you know, guy in his late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
That's what fishing was back then. Look at the young influencers now that's taking up fishing. It's a thing now in the young demographic. It's really, really hot. Hunting, you got more, it's a younger demographic. It's not the older Midwest that people used to think that, no, I got friends from the city who go and they love to hunt. And so what I wanted to do is be an aggregator of all these great niche sports, bring them all together. And then you drive traffic because you don't know exactly. Look, I never watched chess. I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew my friends played chess. I have friends play chess and they loved it, but I just couldn't get into the game. I love watching chess now on Lights Out Sports TV and the commentary of it, the strategy. So I'm sitting there listening. I'm like, oh damn, this is really, really cool how they break it down. I don't think I would have ever watched chess if I didn't launch Lights Out Sports TV. I really wouldn't.
I mean, have you ever did you ever approach Magnus Carlsen for an analyst role at Lights Out, the Lights Out Chess Network, or or
No,
is that not? Okay.
I would though.
Yeah.
I would for sure. But again, it really comes down to we talked about the East West Shrine Bowl, right? The East West Shrine Bowl has been around for 100 years, 100, right? And the East West Shrine Bowl is the oldest all-star game, even older than the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. And this is for college,
For college.
College seniors, right? Or is it?
No, they had juniors this year,
juniors
too.
as well.
Yeah,
okay. Juniors
first
and seniors.
year they had juniors.
For context, it's college football, juniors and seniors.
Yeah. And so, I started looking and said, hey, they approached me first with an idea. And I was like, why in the hell? You guys are the Shrine, right?
Yeah.
The Shrine Bowl. And I've been watching for forever. Why aren't there practices covered like the Senior Bowls? Why isn't no one live streaming the practice yet? So I said, man, that's a great idea. So I brought my production out there to Denton, Texas, and we live streamed 4 days of practice. And check this out. This was they had 92 guys to go to the combine. Their most ever.
Yeah.
So many people tuned in to watch that live practice. These guys' stock just
I'm sure the NFL scouts watched it too.
Yeah.
Because it's like they get you're giving them a sneak peek at what they get a head start
right
on evaluating. I mean, obviously you want more people than just scouts, but I love that you brought up streaming because, man, this is the only thing I'm seeing these days on my timeline is clips of streamers and live streams of someone doing something. And we are entering an era, Shawne, I believe, that more consumers are interested in watching a lot of more off-scripted content than the main thing, the main event. And what I'm excited about, something like you're doing, for example, is streaming the tailgates.
Yeah.
Right? When you have some of your former favorite players and folks running around the tailgate, engaging with the fans, you don't know what someone's going to say next. Like there's some appealing, there's some appeal in that. And I think that's this, what have you seen a shift in sort of the streaming space in that regard? Yeah,
big time. And the influencers and the people with bigger followings are now taking over because the landscape of streaming and TV in general has just changed. Right? So back then, you would have to go to one of the big 4 or 5 networks to get on it if you wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Or if you wanted to be a gamer, it was only a couple places to go. Right now, with these guys, these personalities, they've taken over, and they've become the platform that now these 4 or 5 big networks need.
Yeah,
the Pat McAfees of the world, right? He built himself so much that one of the biggest networks in the world had to go to him and say, "Hey, we need you here." That's a very powerful thing, and so for us, I saw the landscape of everything changing. So we're capable of doing all that stuff now, having people jump on and live stream and commentate over the fights now from wherever they are.
Yeah,
be their own commentator and stuff, and we've built some really, really cool things.
Yeah, I look at these videos of I mentioned this earlier, Kaisa Nat or I Show Speed, and these guys are getting live streamed, just walking around another country. And the interactions of people, and people are clipping that, and they're getting millions and millions of views. But I see the same thing for sports.
Yeah,
like people want to see Shawne Merriman around fight night, getting wine and dine, and all these people coming and say hello. Like that alone is entertainment.
Yeah,
it's like the entertainment behind the entertainment.
I've never been to a tailgate until I retired. I've never been to one in my life ever.
Yeah.
My first one was in 2016. My first tailgate I've ever been to. I missed this. This was the real action out here in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And, I'm out there in the field handling business. So I said, man, why? I was looking around of content, and tailgating in general is like the pregame before the game. Everybody loves a tailgate. So I wanted to create a show built around tailgating, live stream. Because, sometimes people will take little clips and videos and post tailgates, you'll see it, but you never really get the full experience. of an actual real tailgate. So last year, I launched a 60-minute live tailgating show with the NFL. Well, not with the NFL, but at the NFL games, parking lots, called the Ultimate Fan Zone.
Yeah.
And
I've heard of it. Yeah,
it's three former players to basically every team. Last year, we had the Chargers and the Bills out in their parking lots.
Makes sense. Former Charger and Bill over here.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to go back to my squad first, and we had three former players to every team. So 3 former Chargers, 3 former Bills. They're out in the parking lots with the fans and the grilling and the RVs, and breaking down the game with and everybody has their own special thing with tailgate. You get out there in Buffalo. Buffalo's tailgate is unbelievable. Like, so you can't even you can't put it into words unless you actually see it. And I'm not talking about just the table jumping. I mean, we've seen
That's
that.
where I was going to go.
Yeah, we see that, man. But they got ketchup and mustard and just like craziness. It's if you go back and watch the show that's on Lights Out Sports we did in Buffalo, one of the tailgates, we went to Game Day Hospitalities. So I partnered with Game Day Hospitality, which is the #1 tailgating company in basically in the country.
Yeah.
And we've come together to make this awesome, kick-ass experience with tailgating.
Yeah.
This year we have 20 markets.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we had just the Chargers and the Bills at their parking lots.
I want to see the Eagles tailgate.
Yes.
Are you covering the Eagles?
Yes, we got the Eagles too.
Yeah.
We got the Eagles too. So 20 markets this year. 20 teams, 20 teams tailgates. And we're gonna simulcast.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna simulcast all the tailgates, and we'll have one channel that look very much like Red Zone.
Yeah,
but it'll be for tailgates. And again, tailgates are friends and family, and it's one of the first things you have when you got FOMO that you didn't go to the game. It's like, damn, you see everybody having fun there and videos being sent. Like, man, I wish you were here. I wish that FOMO feeling of you wish you came to the game.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a groundbreaking thing that's happened in sports.
And once again, this is where we're trending. This is it's a great space that you've chosen, Shawne. When I get NFL guys on the show, everyone has their welcome to the NFL moment where they get lit up or something happens. They're like, oh shoot, this is a men's league.
Yeah. But
on here, we ask, what was your welcome to entrepreneurship moment? The moment where you're like, damn, running a business is not easy. Do you have a specific story you're willing to share?
Yeah. One of the first fights that we had, for Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, it was a mess. I mean, it was a complete mess. Fighters were dropping and we couldn't get anybody in. It was just, couldn't get the right team together. It was a lot. I got a call 4:30 in the morning. Our first fight was on Saturday. Mm-hmm. I got a call 4:30 in the morning that the fight may be canceled because there wasn't enough fights. Too many fights had dropped. California State Commission, you got to have a certain number of fights, I think 5 or 6 fights in order to have an event, right? You got to have at least that. And I got a call 4:30 in the morning that we might have to cancel the fight. First time out, it's all over the press, the media. This is the big, this and that. We walked in with 9 fights, which is great. And then we got all the way down to 5. We dropped 4 fights in 3 or 4 days. From Monday to Thursday, we dropped 4 fights. So I'm thinking my first time out, this is going to look like an epic failure.
Yeah.
Right? Epic failure. And so much time and money and all this stuff was already spent because the cage is being set up 2 days before the fight. You got the lights and production team putting up the lights in the studio. Everything's done. The money's spent. Tickets are sold. It's, so now we're looking like, man, it was, in my heart, it was the first time I actually thought that I was going to have a heart attack.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was tough. In fact, I was this close from seeing if I can get licensed to keep the fight on.
You were going to step in there and fight yourself.
Yeah.
As the commissioner of the league, just to make sure you had the event was going on.
Yeah.
Who are you going to fight?
Anybody who stepped in there.
Does it matter the weight class?
Doesn't matter. Well, a heavyweight, obviously.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter who was in there. Whoever I could get the fight to keep that fight on, I was going to fight.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that really happened. I actually was going through the process to submit everything to commission. I was going to fight in 2 days. So I went through the whole submitting process. And I asked the matchmaker, my matchmaker at the time, I said, how long does it take to get licensed? And what do I have to do to get cleared to fight in 2 days so we can keep the fight on?
All right. So Sunday rolls around, Sunday morning, you wake up. What's happened? Like, how do you feel?
We got in, we sold a little over 1,000 tickets our first time out, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, people showed up and it was awesome. Around 1,000.
To get 1,000 people to show up for anything is significant.
Yeah. Viewership was great. Production was pristine. Everything was on point. But a couple of days before the fight, I thought we were done.
Wow. That's a good one. That's a good one. Have you told that story before?
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow. That's well, hopefully we don't have to have those problems again.
No, we're past that now.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I got a better team now, and just we're in a much better situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What is the hardest part about being an entrepreneur for you?
So, you know, I got some of the staff that, like, you know, they call me boss, or, you know, something like. I hate it. I hate that because, you know, I see myself as just a team leader, right? I've always been that way. And what have I done most of my life? I led teams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no different than what I'm doing now. I'm just leading a different team in a different field.
Yeah.
You need all 11 guys on the field to do what they need to do in order to win.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you have that one that missed their block or go the wrong way or wasn't in the playbook or not doing what they're supposed to do. And that play fails because of that one person. So deciding when to separate yourself or let go, fire, release, whatever that one person, you gotta identify that right away and nip it in the bud so you can keep the team intact. Because you cannot do what I'm doing. I don't think there's no way of massive success without building a team.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like I have one of the best teams in combat sports. You know, I'm some very and on the streaming side as well. PR. I built a massive team to put me in a position to win.
Before we get out of here, Shawne, 5 years from now,
yeah,
where would you want the Lights Out brand to be? Where will we be in 5 years from now?
Well, I mean, 5 years is great, but I would like Lights Out to be around a lot longer than me. I believe that even at the time when I created Lights Out, I always felt that Lights Out was much bigger than one person. It was much bigger than me. In fact, it was a world-renowned company, a brand that if marketed right and used correctly and built correctly, it can be around a lot longer than I can ever be on this earth. And from the streaming to licensing, you know, I own Lights Out in 37 categories, classifications in 10 countries.
Yeah,
you know, and so this is something that I always wanted to do, and I'm doing it.
And you're doing it, and we appreciate you coming on and sharing a bit here in HQ here in Vegas. So this has been another great episode of the Athletes and Assets podcast with a 3-time Pro Bowler, entrepreneur of Lights Out, Shawne Merriman. Shawne, appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Appreciate it.